On this episode of RevHang, Ben and I talk about the Formula One Mexican Grand Prix. Let's do it. Hello everybody and welcome back to RevHang. I'm Nathan and alongside me across the airwaves is my good friend and co-host, as always, Ben Bagley. How you doing, Ben?
Doing pretty good. Just got back from a little neighborhood Halloween party, and it's been a decidedly unspooky Halloween. My fiance and I just got It Takes Two for the PlayStation to try and play that. It's actually pretty good.
Yes, it is a good game. I've played that. I forget who I played it with, but I played it for a little bit with somebody. It's a good one. Yeah, I also had a fairly unspooky Halloween. I went to a nice restaurant with my girlfriend because today is our 1-year anniversary.
You guys started dating on Halloween?
Halloween was our first date.
That's pretty metal.
It was, yeah. Sushi on Halloween. It was
nice.
It was something. But yeah, so it's the easiest anniversary to remember in the world.
But you get extra points subtracted if you accidentally forget it.
Yeah, that's the catch there. But I don't really see that happening, but we'll see. Now we just got to get married on Halloween so that we can keep that going. But
yeah, getting married on holidays is always what I'd recommend for sure.
That sounds like a great idea. Yeah. Well, this is not a betrothal podcast. This is a racing podcast. So let's jump right in. We've got some, maybe not paddock news. I don't really know what else to call this section because we're not going back to Zoomer rumors from last season. But this is a rumor, and it is a spicy one. So there has been a rumor flying around, 2 rumors actually, both of them surrounding Fernando Alonso. One of the rumors is that he will retire at the end of the season, which seems plausible, maybe not likely to me, but plausible. And the other one that seems less plausible, and even less likely, is that Fernando Alonso will replace Sergio Perez in the Red Bull starting next season.
That's a meme. That's memeing.
I think so too. I think so too.
It would be funny though.
But I mean, let's just say what if for a second.
Okay, let's play it out.
Fernando Alonso, his time at Aston Martin started off great, but has only gone downhill since the beginning of the season.
Right.
Everybody knows Alonso is a fantastic driver, and everybody knows that Checo is struggling. So let's say Perez retires, or let's not even say Perez retires. Let's say Red Bull goes, "Hey, Checo, you want to go back to your old team?"
It's just a straight across trade.
Straight across trade. So we see Checo go back to Aston Martin, which he was racing at when it was Racing Point, and Force India before that. And Alonso goes into the Red Bull for 1 season before announcing his retirement to bridge the gap between Checo and Ricciardo. What news this would be? Again, super unlikely. But if this happened, would we actually see a title fight next season?
I don't know.
My heart is telling me yes, but my brain is telling me probably not.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I think that was some spicy rumorage that I found today.
Yeah. No, I think if you put like Norris, Hamilton, Russell in the second Red Bull seat, then yeah, you see a title fight. But I don't know.
You don't see Alonso?
He's still a great racing driver. Like, that's not contested at all. But is he at that front row level? I don't know. I mean, he's got great strategy. Clearly, he's been doing it for a while, and he's got a lot of experience. But I can't help but see him more as a driver to help lead development of a team, rather than a driver to lead a team to another Constructors' Championship, necessarily.
That's fair, yeah. Anyway, that was the rumor I saw today, and decided to throw that in there, because it was a little bit of spice for the podcast.
It would be funny.
Yes, some pumpkin spice, as the season calls for. But, yeah, that is probably not going to happen. More likely is that he retires at the end of the season, and even that I don't think is super likely. I would be more surprised if he retired than I would if Checo retired. But that's a whole nother conversation.
We'll save it for next podcast. We got to have some content.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it is Brazil and there's a sprint race, so we'll have plenty of content next week.
Oh, I forgot that it was a sprint race.
Yep, the last one. Thank goodness. Or is there one in Las Vegas? I don't think there is. There better not be.
The only thing that can make Las Vegas worse is a sprint race before the main one.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, let's go into the Mexico City Grand Prix. This is actually one of it's one of the races that I find that I actually enjoy every season that I never really think about. Like, I never really think about, oh, Mexico's coming up. But then when it happens, I think I always just look forward to turn one, because turn one, lap one is always, something always happens in Mexico. And,
oh boy,
this year was no different.
Yeah, I love the track layout for Mexico.
I do too. I think the 4-5-6 complex could be a little better. It slows the cars way down, and there's not really an overtaking opportunity.
Yeah, but I love watching them go through that 12 through 17 complex.
Yeah, in the stadium section.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I think it's a fun track. The altitude also makes it interesting, a different challenge for the drivers for various different reasons. And then tires were also a factor this week because they were on the softest compounds they could be on, and so tire wear was a big factor. But anyway, it was a pretty crazy qualifying session. We'll go through it and you'll see why. So, on pole position was Charles Leclerc, followed by Carlos Sainz. Max Verstappen was in third. Daniel Ricciardo took P4 in an AlphaTauri, followed by Sergio Perez behind him. Sixth was Lewis Hamilton. Seventh was Oscar Piastri. Eighth was George Russell. Ninth was Valtteri Bottas. And 10th was Zhou Guanyu. So, in Q3, we had two Alfa Romeos, an AlphaTauri, and Max Verstappen in P3.
Weird.
Very weird. It was a very exciting qualifying session. Lando Norris qualified at P19. He just kept messing up in Q1 and could not get a clean lap on the board. Albon was almost into Q3 but had his lap time deleted, and so he was relegated in Q2. And then Yuki Tsunoda qualified P15, but unfortunately had an engine penalty and so started from the back of the grid. All right. Going into the race, Verstappen and Perez got great jumps on the start. Perez and Leclerc, going into turn one, made some classic Mexico turn one contact, and that ended Perez's race. He flew up in the air, landed pretty hard, and had a ton of side pod damage. So his race was over. Leclerc got away with it for the most part. He did have some wing damage. And then Verstappen was able to get away in the front of the pack. Hamilton and Ricciardo fought for P4 until Hamilton finally got past after 11 hard-fought laps. Lando Norris quickly made his way through the field at the beginning of the race, up to P8 by lap 31. On lap 33, Kevin Magnussen hit the wall and caused a red flag after a suspension failure. This gave every car a free pit stop and shook up the strategies quite a bit. On the restart, Verstappen got a good enough start to maintain the lead. Norris did not get a good start, dropping from P10 at the time to P14, but he was eventually able to make up those positions. On lap 40, Hamilton passed Leclerc for P2. On lap 48, Piastri and Tsunoda made some light contact into turn 2, but both of them got away with it. But then just one lap later, Tsunoda drove right into the side of Piastri into turn 1, spinning himself out and sending him to the back of the pack. On lap 60, Norris passed Ricciardo for P6, and then 7 laps later, he passed Russell for P5. Ricciardo chased Russell down at the end of the race, but was unable to pass him on the last lap, but watching an AlphaTauri chase down a Mercedes was quite entertaining. All right, that runs off the race. Let's go through the results real quick, and then we'll talk about it. The winner of the race was Max Verstappen. Second and third were Hamilton and Leclerc. Fourth and fifth were Sainz and Norris. 6 through 10 was Russell, Ricciardo, Piastri, Albon, and Ocon. 11 through 15, rounding off the finishers, were Gasly, Tsunoda, Hülkenberg, Zhou, and Bottas. And then we had 5 retirements, and they were Logan Sargent, Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso, Kevin Magnussen, and Sergio Perez. All right. So, some things to talk about in this race. Lando Norris was the driver of the day, as voted by the fans, and it shouldn't have been anybody else.
Yeah, no, you always talk about seeing Hamilton or Verstappen make their way through a field after starting from an engine penalty or some freak mechanical accident or something like that, and just carving their way through the field. But Norris did pretty much the exact same thing here at Mexico. And it was pretty cool to see somebody who wasn't a Mercedes or a Red Bull be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. He actually carved his way through most of the field like 3 times. His first stint, he was on soft tires when everybody else was on either mediums or hards, and so he had a short stint starting from 19th. I think he made it up to 14th by the end of the first stint, which was like less than 10 laps. And then his second stint, he made it from, I think he started in like 18th again in that stint, made it all the way up to P8 by the end of that stint, and then pit under safety car when Magnussen crashed. But unfortunately, I was screaming at the TV. They decided to chance that it would not turn into a red flag and that it would just be a safety car. So Norris pitted to get that cheap pit stop, but then came out 2 positions back, and then the red flag came out and everybody else got a free pit stop. So did not work out for McLaren very well. And I was like yelling at the TV, like, whatever you do, do not pit Norris. And they did. So, yeah. Then he obviously started 10th, dropped back to 14th because he did have a pretty poor start. And then made his way all the way back up to, P5, I think he finished? Yeah, by the end of the race. So if he didn't have the bad luck, the bad start, if he started in the top 10, he would have definitely been on the podium, probably P2. Because he was just that fast this week.
Yeah. I can't remember. Were any of the strategies predicting a possible one stop for teams or during this race?
Think
because I was looking. Oh, it looks like Ocon did
a one stop, but that would have been the red flag. So I think one stop was like kind of a stretch. Well, maybe.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was Norris just kind of lucked out. I know he kind of had an unfortunate strategy during the red flag, but he really kind of lucked out with being able to keep the field so close together with the spacing of the various incidents.
Yeah, for
in
sure.
addition to just really timing the other pit stops pretty well strategy. And because when I saw he was on soft, I was like, there's no way that's going to work. Like, everybody else is going to be going for like a 1 or 2 stop, and then just everyone's running 2 or 3 stops. I mean, Verstappen won with 3 pits.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it worked out really well for him, and it was cool to see him given that opportunity to show off just some good racing and strategy.
For sure. Lando Norris and turn 1 overtakes. Name a better duo. I'll wait.
Perez and going off at turn 1.
Oh, there we go. Speaking of which, nice segue, Ben. Yeah, Perez is not... This poor guy, I feel so bad for him. He's having a rough end to his season. I really was hoping he would find some mojo in Mexico.
This is really his chance to kind of get some positive sentiment and get some points back.
Yeah. But he went for all the glory in turn 1 and paid the price for it. The incident was, I would say, a racing incident, but definitely more his fault than Leclerc's.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that he just turned in on Leclerc.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, it's just it's kind of getting hard to watch at this point. I think it's just he just can't seem to figure it out anymore. I don't know what his. I mean, he's got 240 points in the championship, but I think he's been hovering around that for like since the summer break.
Yeah, he's kind of in a similar spot to Logan Sargent, honestly, in mindset, I feel like. Or at least the way that he's been racing.
Yeah, seems like it. Um, but yeah, I mean, if he doesn't finish second in the championship, I would be very wary of his seat if I were him.
Yeah, it really didn't help that Hamilton came in second to this race.
Yeah, Hamilton's only 20 points behind Perez now, so I mean, that's less than a race win.
Yeah, Perez just has to not finish the next race, and then
it'll be all
pretty much
up.
signed. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got 3 races left. There's a 20-point gap between Hamilton and Perez, and I would not be surprised if Hamilton was able to pass Perez by the end of the season.
Yeah,
which would be kind of
that'd be kind of a crazy comeback.
It'd be pretty nuts, and not a good luck for Perez at all.
No.
Unfortunately, it's like he's such a nice guy, and I feel so bad for him. But that's the way Formula One is. If you don't perform, you're kind of out.
Yeah.
But nothing is set in stone yet. I mean, technically, he is under contract going through next year.
Yeah, and it sounds like he still has team support, which is good. That is a lot for somebody's mentality. He has some team support.
He has some team support minus Helmut Marko. And I mean, the other thing is like, what are you gonna say as the team principal? Like, no, we hate our driver. Like that's not gonna help anything.
That's true. Yeah.
So I think there's always gonna be that. Yeah, we have full confidence in him. We just need to help him get back on track, kind of stuff. But behind closed doors, I think there's some serious conversations going on right now about what they're gonna do, because Mercedes is rapidly catching and closing the gap between themselves and Red Bull. And I was thinking about this during the race. It seems like the gap between Red Bull and the rest of the field has closed in the since the summer break, probably. While Verstappen is still way ahead, I think the car advantage is starting to slip a little bit from where it was at the beginning of the season.
Oh, yeah.
Between Mercedes and Ferrari and McLaren, I think all 3 of those cars are starting to make serious headway towards that Red Bull. The one thing that needs to be noted is that this car was developed under penalty. They had, I think, 60% of their... or they had like a 10% wind tunnel testing penalty because of the cost cap penalty they incurred 2 seasons ago. So this car was developed with that in mind, and so this next year's car will have full testing and everything like that. So it's they've probably also been developing next year's car since probably a quarter of the way through this season. So I would be surprised if Red Bull didn't come out as the best car again next season, but I think it's going to be closer next year than it was this year. And
a lot of teams did a lot of learning this year, and you saw that a lot after summer break, as you saw some much faster cars like the Ferrari and the Mercedes that are starting to be able to keep up. I mean, Hamilton was only 14 seconds behind Verstappen at the end of the race, which is not the same delta as we're used to seeing.
Right. And Hamilton had to pass a bunch of people to get there. So I think that Mercedes is going to be at least more of a challenge next year. I think Mercedes has the best shot at taking the largest step forward, and possibly McLaren too, because they've just been doing leaps and bounds better as the year goes on, but they always seem to start slow and then finish well. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
McLaren also always seems to make progress, and then we're always excited for the next season, and then we're like, oh my god, they're the
They
new
start all over again.
they're the new Haas. Like the last 2 years, they've been the slowest car on the first race. So, we'll see what happens. But
Yeah, but even if they're not challenging for World Drivers' Championship, I think they will definitely be solidly in the running for the Constructors' Championship.
yeah, I think so too, and I think that's why Red Bull are going to start having these conversations about, is Perez going to seal us a Constructors' Championship next year if he can't even finish second in the most dominant car that's ever been driven on an F1 track.
Yeah, because I mean, you look at like Hamilton and Russell, like they're a pretty good duo. We haven't really seen them scrap all that much on the track, but they've been consistent in just being able to kind of work together and bring in consistent points, which is why Mercedes is pretty far ahead of the other teams right now in constructors.
Yeah.
Well, I say pretty far. It's like 20 points, but you know.
Yeah. Well, they started pretty solidly in the midfield this year.
Yeah.
So definitely a comeback throughout the season for them. But yeah, I mean, if you remember, it was Red Bull, and then Aston Martin was second, followed by Ferrari, and then Mercedes was like fourth, and they were like fighting with Alpines. Like they were a midfield team at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
So definitely a great comeback from them. Looking at the Drivers' Championship, it's all sorts of rainbow colors. It seems like last year, if I remember right, last year it was just blocks of two all the way down the grid for most of the year.
Yeah, you're definitely seeing drivers driving the snot out of their cars and hitting that limit.
Yeah. Hamilton has definitely outperformed Russell this year. It doesn't feel like it, but if you look at the points, that is definitely the case. And then Sainz also has outperformed Leclerc this year. And I don't think Leclerc can really blame bad luck, because I don't think he's had any super bad luck this year. Sainz has just been super consistent. And also won that race in Singapore, so that helped him a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the Sainz v. Alonso fight.
Yeah.
I think that'll be interesting to see who comes out on top, because Sainz clearly is the better car, but Alonso got a huge boost at the start of the season, so I don't think Alonso will be holding on to that tie for long at all.
If Alonso finishes... We got 3 races left. I think...
If he finishes ahead of Piastri... Well, no, Piastri's too far.
Yeah.
Ahead of Russell.
I think...
That'll be a feat.
Yeah, if he can manage to stay ahead of Russell... Because there's a 17-point gap to Leclerc behind him. Yeah, I don't see him finishing ahead of Leclerc.
Yeah, and I mean, even to Russell, that's 32 points.
Yeah, but 3 races, 32 points, that's an average of 10 points a race, so he'd have to get like 4th. Yeah, he'd have to basically finish 4th in all the races, with Fernando DNFing all the rest of the races or getting no points to catch him.
Alonso's DNF'd the last 2 races.
That is true, but George Russell has not finished 4th in the last 2 races.
Has he really not?
No. I don't remember where he finished in... Where did he finish in the US? He might have finished 4th. But anyway, I don't think Russell's going to be able to pull an average of 4th place for the remaining 3 races.
I gotcha.
So I think he'll probably finish 7th behind Leclerc, but ahead of Russell.
That's going to hurt as a drop.
Yeah, I think what's going to be really interesting is to see if Lando can pass Sainz.
Ooh.
Seems like that's going to be a closer one, I think.
Yeah, that'll be a good one.
But anyway, so moving on in our talking points, Danny Ricciardo is absolutely killing. Well, he killed it this week. He hasn't had enough time, I don't think, to have solidly proven himself. But oh boy, did he take a step in the right direction this week. Qualifying P4 on pure pace in that AlphaTauri. He was fast all weekend long, and Yeah, he maintained the P4 for 11 laps over a Mercedes, and then almost finished 6th. If he had one more lap, he probably would have finished 6th, passing Russell.
Yeah, I I liked watching Ricardo fight with Hamilton. It was like the good old days.
Yeah, for sure. He definitely drove the wheels off of that AlphaTauri, and then also slungshot AlphaTauri into 8th place in the Constructors' Championship, earning them a nice cool $20 million. So definitely great result from Ricardo. And yeah, with that happening this week for him, and then Perez going out on lap 1, pretty much a worst case scenario in terms of what Perez wanted from this race.
Yeah, it does make me wonder about Tsunoda though, because I mean we saw Lawson get into the car, and also kind of start to outperform him so early, and then
Yeah.
you see Ricardo jump into the car and also start doing the same thing. So is it
Well,
the driver, or is it a little bit their teammate that they're outperforming too?
It's
Like, what is the car capable of versus who's driving it?
it's hard to know. Yeah. I since Tsunoda has been in the sport, I have been. This is gonna sound super harsh, but I've just been really underwhelmed.
He did actually pretty good for his rookie season.
His rookie season was not bad. It wasn't like on the level of Piastri's rookie season.
No, but he scored points in his first race, and
He
then
did.
from there he's able to be kind of consistent at least.
Well, yeah, I think he scored points in his first race, and then it didn't score again until after the summer break. But
Oh, maybe. What was I thinking? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, his rookie season wasn't bad. He was a rookie. It's not on Sargent levels. It's not on DeVries levels. But still,
Mazepin levels.
yeah. Well, I mean, now he's 3 years into his F1 seat at AlphaTauri and hasn't shown enough signs of improvement for me to where I think he deserves to still be in that Red Bull track. Because, I mean, if you think about what AlphaTauri is, it's the Red Bull B team. It's where they train new up-and-coming talents to possibly put them in the Red Bull seat. And I just don't realistically see Tsunoda ever stepping into that second Red Bull seat.
That makes sense. Okay, I can see it from that point of view.
So, I mean, he's good enough to be in F1, but I think it's time for Red Bull to let him go, put Lawson in there, or Ayumu Iwasa, or what's the other guy's name? I forgot.
Alex Palou.
Well, I wasn't gonna go there, but at this point, I think that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's people winning in the ranks that I think deserve a shot. Unfortunately, I don't see Yuki Tsunoda getting picked up by any other team if he were dropped by AlphaTauri. Other than maybe Alfa Romeo, if they decide to make a change.
I guess.
But even
who
still,
would they be replacing? Bottas is outscoring Tsunoda, even if it's only by a little bit. And
yeah,
I mean, Joe's pretty close to there, and he's much younger.
yeah, it's really hard to know what's gonna happen with AlphaTauri. But yeah, I'm surprised they signed him again for next season. So, but we'll see. He could break out next season, but I'm just thinking, like, if you look at the other drivers that were in AlphaTauri for, 3 seasons into their career, you've got drivers like Gasly, who 3 seasons into his career was absolutely insane in that AlphaTauri. He won a race in the AlphaTauri. You've got people like, Albon wasn't in the AlphaTauri, but he came out of that whole area and then was thrust into a really high pressure environment, and now he's probably 4 or 5 seasons in by now, but 3 seasons in he was even still doing great.
Yep.
my point is people like Gasly and Albon who came through that program, I think have impressed me a lot more than Tsunoda ever has.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but again, that's probably just a little harsh of me. I'm just a backyard F1 fan.
But we watch a lot of it. So
that is true. We watch
that's
it
gotta count
every
for
time it's
something.
on. Yeah. But yeah, so we'll see what happens with AlphaTauri. Ricciardo is doing fantastic. I think he is on the right track, and if he can make this move to Red Bull and then hold his own in a Red Bull, which is a completely different conversation, and I'm not sure if anyone can actually meet Red Bull's expectations against Max. I think he can save his image, because I think McLaren was very damaging for him. But we'll see what happens. Moving on, we've got Hamilton and Perez in the fight for P2. We talked about that a little bit. 20 points separate them. That's not a lot. And then Aston Martin struggles we talked about a little bit. But now they've had a double DNF this race. They had a DNF last race. Fernando Alonso has not finished the last 2 races. And even if he did, he would not have scrubbed points. I don't know what happened to Aston Martin. It just seems like since the summer break, they've just plummeted.
Yeah, I know that. I think even especially in this race, they were trialing new parts on the car.
Yeah.
And testing stuff like that. I think last race Stroll had the upgrades, and then this race maybe Alonso had some of the changes, or did they change Alonso's car back to how it was before?
I think they changed Alonso's back to what it was before, but
yeah,
I mean,
but it doesn't seem like anything's sticking now.
Yeah, but I think it's all development and testing because, I mean, if you look at the Constructors' Championship, I think they've given up on any hopes of staying with McLaren or Ferrari. I mean, obviously Ferrari's way too far ahead, but even McLaren. But they've got 35-point gap to Alpine below them in 6th. And the way Alpine's
so
been
they can
performing,
afford to go on a little bit of a money save, huh?
Yeah, they could. I mean, they are going to finish 5th in the championship at this point. So I think them throwing on all these test things in racing scenarios actually might not be the worst move. It's just going to be a little frustrating in the meantime because they're not going to score many points. They are giving up the positions in the Drivers' Championship as a result of that. I mean, Stroll's 11th place in the championship is not safe. Ocon could easily pass that in 3 races. Albon is probably not as likely, but Ocon's only 8 points behind him in the championship. So that's, 2 good performances out of Ocon, and he'll be tied, if not past him. So we'll see what happens there. Don't really need to go through the championships much. Everybody knows where everybody's at. But yeah. So with that all being said, that was the Mexico City Grand Prix. Pretty good race. Fairly entertaining, especially towards the end. Let's move on to the Pit Stop Championship. In first place this week was Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari with a time of 2.35 seconds. Not the fastest pit stop we've seen. Certainly not the slowest. And then second and third were Ricciardo and Verstappen. Fourth and fifth were Leclerc and Stroll. 6 through 10 was Hamilton, Norris, Russell, Gasly, and Alonso. Going through the standings real quick. And we will go through these standings because it is actually shockingly getting kind of close, especially in the constructors. So, in first place is Sergio Perez at 293 points. Leclerc's in second with 239. Norris is in third with 227. Verstappen is next with 174. Sainz with 169. Piastri with 111. Tsunoda with 110. Ocon with 108. Gasly with 80. Stroll with 77. Alonso with 52, Russell with 45, Hamilton with 42, De Vries with 36, Ricciardo with 36, and Lawson with 30. Sargent with 23, Zhou with 23, Bottas with 13, Albon with 11, Magnussen with 9, and Hülkenberg with 4. Alright, lots of names there. Haas has the worst pit crew, it seems, by a country mile.
Yeah.
Alfa Romeo and Williams are not far behind, which is weird because Williams usually has a really good pit crew. And then Mercedes also down there in what looks like 7th place in the championship in the constructors for the pit stop championship. But what's exciting is Ferrari is starting to catch up to Red Bull in the constructors championship.
Do you think they'll be able to catch up to Red Bull before the end of the season?
It's hard to say, but if they can, I mean, it's a 59-point gap. But if you think about a double DNF versus a first second, that's like a 25 plus 18. That's like a 43-point swing. So with 3 races left, probably not likely, but definitely still possible. So I thought that was interesting because usually Red Bull runs away with it in the pit stops too, like by hundreds of points, but Ferrari is actually clawing back into it. So I just noticed that. I thought that was a mentionable little tidbit there. But all right, moving on to the overtake of the week. I gave this to Lewis Hamilton for his overtake on Charles Leclerc on lap 40 of the race. This is the one where Hamilton dove into the grass on the side of the track to get past him on the straight and into turn 1. This was kind of a toss-up. Norris also had a couple of fantastic overtakes.
Yeah, Norris's last overtake on
Russell.
Yeah.
That was definitely...
I liked that one. That was good.
Yeah, he crossed him up a couple times. That one was probably the runner-up. And then Norris's overtake on Ricciardo was also really good.
Yeah, but you can't give away the place to someone who didn't just pass in the grass on a straight.
If you go into the grass and make the pass happen, that is that's impressive. So, yeah, that's our overtake of the week. There were some pretty spectacular overtakes, though. So congrats to Lewis for taking the cake on that one. Turning F1 into the World Rally Championship.
Ooh, that's a racing series I want to see. Yeah. F1 drivers in the acronym WRC. Yeah.
Have you watched the what is it called? Is it the Race of Champions?
I heard of that.
I think it's the Race of Championship.
I never actually watched it though.
So Race of Champions is a rally adjacent series. I mean, it is rally. They're driving WRC cars essentially, where they get these top tier racing drivers from different countries, and you get basically 2 drivers from each country that become a team. So it's countries facing off against each other. And they just do these like short power stage rally races, and it's like those rings where you have two cars driving around the ring at the same time on these 2 different sections of the track, kind of thing. But usually it's done in the snow or in different conditions. It's pretty fun. It's fun to watch, but usually it's F1 drivers that end up. And it's sometimes they get some rally drivers, sometimes some WEC drivers, just depending on the countries and what their stockpiles are on F1 drivers. But so I think last year the German team was Sebastian Vettel and Mick Schumacher.
Okay, I think I remember hearing something about that at least.
Yeah, and then there was I think one year the Finnish team was like Kimi Räikkönen and Mika Häkkinen, or something like that. And so yeah, they just have these, top name racing drivers from around the world come up and team up with their fellow countrymen against other countries. It's pretty fun to watch. But if you're itching for F1 drivers in rally cars, that would be where I suggest you look.
Well, okay. I'll give it a look then.
Awesome. All right. So let's move on to our weekly predictions. We'll go first with this week's in the Mexico City Grand Prix, and then Brazil later on for our future predictions. All right, Ben. This was not a good week for us.
No, it was not. At least we were both equally bad.
This is true, yeah. Well, we were all kind of dancing around the right answers, but none of them really landed. So, all right.
We both had Perez way too high up.
Yeah. So to remind everybody at the top five, it was Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Sainz, and Norris. What'd you say, Ben?
So, obviously, we got Verstappen right for the first place. But after that, it gets a little dicey. So I had Norris second, Sainz third, Hamilton fourth, and I had poor Perez in fifth place. And then I had Alexander Albon as my dark horse.
Yeah. I had Verstappen winning, so I got that right as well. But I had Perez finishing second, and then Norris, Hamilton, and Piastri. Yeah. And then my dark horse was Fernando Alonso. I don't think he's going to get my dark horse slot again this season. But all right. Fastest lap went to Lewis Hamilton this week. What was your guess for that, Ben?
I had Norris.
And I had Perez. All right, driver of the day went to Lando Norris, and we both said Perez.
Yep.
So, oh boy, yeah, that was not.
We put a lot of chips on Perez this week, and it really didn't work out for us.
I mean, if he was gonna do well in a race, it was gonna be this one, right?
Yeah.
But alas, that is not what happened. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't. Oh. Anywho, that's enough Perez bashing. Not that we're trying to, but it's just hard not to. We had someone tell us that they thought that we hated Perez, and we had to tell them that we in fact do not hate Perez. I, as a matter of fact, love Perez. I think he's a super nice guy, and I love that he's got a full-on family and is still racing in F1.
Yeah, and he's about as close as we had to an American driver for like the past few years.
For a long time. Yeah, because Canadians don't count.
No.
But anyway, it's just hard to not talk about someone who's driving the most dominant car in decades.
It's so high profile.
It's so high profile, and he can't seem to figure it out. Where his teammate is breaking records left, right, and center. So it's not that we hate Perez, it's just that on paper he should be performing better, and he's just not.
Yep, and he has the unfortunate analog of following up the Hamilton-Bottas combo, where, Bottas was just so consistent, If Hamilton wasn't first, then Bottas was on the podium with them.
Yeah, whereas that's not necessarily the case with Verstappen and Perez. It kind of was.
You cannot bet on that anymore.
It kind of was for the first couple seasons. But this season, I don't know what's happened, but Perez can't figure the car out. Or he's just in his head too much.
We didn't see that with Bottas.
Yeah.
Even. So, yeah, it's unfortunate that he's had such a close analog in the Hamilton-Bottas combo.
Yeah.
And that really kind of puts a stark light on his performance recently.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, that's enough talking about Perez for now. All right. Let's move on to our predictions for the Brazilian Grand Prix in Sao Paulo. Give me your top five, Ben.
All right, so I've got, again, the human-free bingo spot, Max Verstappen, and then behind him I've got Norris, and I have Piastri in third, which I think would be interesting. I didn't want to go straight to the Hamilton getting second because it's Brazil. So I put him in fourth because, he's still doing pretty well, but I want to give Piastri a chance. Maybe Piastri is the next one to get his Brazilian citizenship. And then after that, I have Carlos Sainz, all reliable. And then my dark horse, maybe a little cheating after seeing this week's performance, maybe not, who knows, is Daniel Ricciardo.
Gotcha. Well, I am not afraid to go with the safe picks this week. I've got Verstappen in first because it's Verstappen. I've got Hamilton in second because it's Brazil. And I've got Russell in third because he won here last year. And then I have Lando in fourth and Sainz in fifth. I think Sainz has been the more consistent Ferrari driver this year. Even though Leclerc did finish higher than him in Mexico, I see Sainz finishing higher than Leclerc this race. And then Norris, obviously, has been fantastic. And then my dark horse is Sergio Perez.
Ouch.
Yeah. Don't expect him fully to be in the top 5, but he is in a Red Bull, so it could... Oh my god. I see why people think we hate Perez. Anyway, moving on.
Wait. Cut that part. We gotta redo the list.
Yeah. Alright, well, take that as you will. Fastest lap, give me your prediction, Ben.
I've got Verstappen.
And I have Hamilton. And
driver of the day?
Driver of the day, what you got?
I have Piastri, because if Piastri does get a podium in Brazil, I think that would be killer.
It would. It would, in fact, be killer. I also have Hamilton as driver of the day. They love him down there, and I think he will put on a show. Hamilton loves Brazil. It's one of his best tracks. So, yep. Those are our predictions for this coming weekend. I love triple headers. It's been a while since we've had one. But here we are. And then we are almost at the end of the season, which is kind of sad to say. The season was a long one, but also kind of flew by at the same time.
It feels like this season has been going on forever.
Yeah. It's weird. It feels like the second half of the season flew by, but like Bahrain feels like 2 years ago.
Yeah. I forget about Bahrain until I think about, or I see the schedule. I was like, shoot, we did race in Bahrain at the start, didn't we?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right, Ben, we got one more segment, and it is all yours. Give me your words of wisdom for this week.
Well, this one actually I'm kind of sharing with Emily, but it's to plant your perennial bulbs before the real big frost sets in. And here in the Willamette Valley, we just kind of got our first big frost week, so kind of run out of time. So get your perennial bulbs in now. They'll do fine in the dirt during the winter, but if you don't get them in now, you're not going to get a chance to plant them before spring, and by then you're going to kind of miss out on that time frame. So if you want your tulips and your daffodils and whatever all bulbs you have in your garage, you're running out of time, so get them planted.
Alrighty.
Yep.
Good stuff.
That's Ben's homeowner words of wisdom.
Yeah.
Plus Emily.
Master gardener right here.
Oh, yeah.
Alrighty. Thank you for that, Ben. And thank you, the listener, for listening to this episode of RevHang. If you enjoyed it, leave a like or rating on the platform you listened on. It really helps us out. If you want to see updated standings for IndyCar and F1 or a calendar of upcoming racing from all sorts of different series, check out our website at revhang.com. If you have a question about racing or about us, hit us up on X using hashtag RevHangPodcast, and we may feature your question on the next show. You can also hit us up on Instagram. I'm actually more likely to see it there. Just DM me, please. I'd love to talk to you. You can also follow Ben on Instagram at BenjiMeetsWorld and myself at 2N_squared. You can follow the RevHang page at RevHang Media. We'll be back in a week to talk about the Formula One Brazil Grand Prix in Sao Paulo. But until then, I have been Nathan.
And I've been.
Thanks for hanging out, guys.
See you later.